I am starting off my year with a list of 24 books that I'm going to try my darndest to read in 2024. Now, of course, I read more than 24 books, but before I can tell you about what books I have chosen this year, we have to go back and look at my 23 books for 2023 and see how I did. So, for the books that I read in 2023, I pulled forward 4 of those as fails from my 2022 list. The first one was Dark Forest by Cixin Liu. I did get that one done and I did really enjoy it. So, high recommend and check on that one. Next is the book Endymion by Dan Simmons, and not only did I finish it, but I also picked up the 4th and final book to that series, The Rise of Endymion, and boy am I glad I did. Endymion itself is probably my least favorite of that quartet, although I do have to say that Rise of Endymion made the series for me. Absolutely it did. It was so fantastic. Check that off twice. Then we have the book Consider Phlebas, which is the very first book of the Culture series. Since I heard so much controversy about that first book, I decided to pick up the second book instead, called Player of Games. And I did have a good time with it, so I do think at some future point I'm going to go back and read Consider Phlebas, but for right now I'm going to count this one as read and checked off the list. Then we have the Book of Jerrig. So this book, I failed. I didn't read it in 2023, and that's because I was just having such a fantastic time with all of my science fiction that I didn't get to a lot of the fantasy books that I wanted to read. And you're going to see that as a trend in this video today. So instead of pulling this book forward, I am going to go ahead and mark this book as failed. Oh, that's the worst. So when a book fails, I'm just going to take it off the list and quit trying to force myself to read something. So, one book failed already for the first time on this list. Let's get into the 5 fantasy books I was supposed to read in 2023. Now remember, I did say that I had a little bit of a struggle bus time with some fantasy books this year. That doesn't mean that I had a hard time with fantasy in general. I just don't like having my escapism books as my to-do list. So I think going forward, I might be decreasing the amount of fantasy that is on my to-do list. So the first one is Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. This one I did get done with, and I do have a big check mark for it. I did enjoy this book. This book was a very dark fantasy vibe, which is so different than his personality on BookTube.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon. I have this YouTube channel. I've got a Wikipedia page, which makes me pretty important. But when Funko turns you into a pop, that is when you know you have reached maximum peak celebrity.
I'll link it in the description box down below. Then we have the book Heroes Die by Matthew Stover. This is a book that was recommended to me by quite a few BookTube channels that I watch and listen to, and it was a really fantastic read, although it is a little bit more traditional than maybe other books. Then we have The Howling Dark by Christopher Ruocchio. This is the second book in his Empire of Silence or Sun Eater trilogy. Now this book I'm currently reading as I'm filming this, so I'm hoping that by the time you watch this, I will have already completed it. And then of course, we have City of Stairs by Mr. Bennett. I was very surprised with how much I liked it and how much it reminded me of Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings. It's not the same, but it's definitely intended for the same audience. So if you liked Way of Kings, you should definitely go check out City of Stairs. I really had a good time with this one. And last but not least is going to be Mirror Empire by Kameron Hurley. This book I didn't get to this year, so that means that I am going to have to pull this book forward. So hopefully I'll do better next year. Now let's get into the science fiction. I divided this category by authors. I have 5 of them where I could choose any work, and then I have title-specific fiction. So let's start with the 5 authors. The first one was Octavia Butler, and as you guys probably already know, I hope, I came out with an entire video dedicated to Octavia Butler because I finished all 12 of the works that she's ever written. So this one is definitely a double or triple check because I got done with Octavia Butler, and boy did I have a good time. Then we have the author C.J. Cherryh. I actually read 2 of her books this year, and that was both Pride of Shanur, which is the start of a series, and then I also read her Hugo winner, Down Below Station. Both of these books I really enjoyed, although I have to say Down Below Station was a lot more politics and a lot less character and plot than I wanted. So I really think that Pride of Shanur was the better of the 2 so far, although I do plan to pick up more of her books in the future. Then we have China Miéville, which of course I read Embassy Town, and I freaking loved this book. It was so haunting and so viscerally disturbing. I think I will be thinking about this book forever, and this author might appear on this year's list. Then, of course, we had Kurt Vonnegut. This was an author that I was really excited to get to, and I read Slaughterhouse-Five by him and really didn't like it. So I ended up picking a second book by him. I picked up Sirens of Titan and didn't like that one either. So I gotta say, I'm gonna scratch poor Kurt Vonnegut off my list. Not for me, author. Then we have a Neal Stephenson book, and I chose Seveneves for the 2023 year, which I had a really good time, and I'm sure you guys are tired of me recommending that book, so if you haven't already, go check it out. Then we have the title-specific books that I got through. I read The Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny. This book was a little bit more confusing, I'm gonna say, than I wanted it to be. It's definitely not quite my style, and I feel like a lot of it went over my head, but I did finish it, so I am checking that one off the list. Next is going to be Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, which I did finish and I absolutely did love. The big disappointment for this book for me was I was hoping that the Denis Villeneuve movie was going to come out, and of course we had the writer's strike, so that didn't happen. But I am still waiting with anticipated breath for this movie. I'm really hoping they don't cancel it. So let me know in the comments section if you've heard any more about that movie. I have the book Grass by Sheri Tepper. This one turned out to be a secret hidden gem for me. I really had a good time with this one, and I absolutely love her world building. So I do have 2 of the follow-up novels in this series, and I am going to continue reading this author. Then we have Doomsday Book by Connie Willis, which was a pseudo sci-fi. It was mostly a historical fiction about a historian going back in time during the time of the Black Plague. And I really enjoyed this book. She really knows how to make you care about characters, so I can't wait to pick up more Connie Willis. Then we have Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers, which is a very short book that was translated from Russian, and I really had a good time with this book. If you don't believe me, go pick it up, but 10 out of 10, really liked it. Then we had Ministry for the Future by Ken Stanley Robinson. I didn't finish this year, I know, what am I thinking? I'm so sorry. I don't know exactly how this book got skipped over. I was trying to formulate this list to get ready for this video, and I'm like, I can't believe I missed this book. But it's too late now. I didn't get to it, so it will be pulled forward for next year's list. Then we have Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, which I finally got to. I'm really glad I got to it because everyone talks about it, but unfortunately, this book did not work for me. I didn't relate to it or have a good time as much as I really wanted to. It's sad for me, but I did finish it, so it gets the check mark. The last book for 2023 is The Mote in God's Eye by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. And I did read this for Space Opera September, and I'm really glad I read it. It had some really spectacular aliens. However, I'm not really sure that I'm going to continue with the series. There's only one other book, and I've heard kind of questionable things about it. So we'll see. So that means of the books that I read in 2023, I only failed at 3 of them, which is me getting better. Hey! So the Book of Jerrig, that's going to be knocked off the list. So that means I'm only pulling forward 2 novels. So this gets to the fun part. Let's talk about the books that I'm going to read in 2024. So I decided to keep my science fiction and fantasy division for this year, although remember that my fantasy is going to be really small this year. The fantasy books that I'm going to read are, of course, the pulled forward one by Kameron Hurley, Mirror Empire. Again, I don't know terrible much about this other than I really want to read a lot of her backlist because she writes such fantastic science fiction. So I really want to give this book a chance. Then we have China Mieville and Perdido Street Station. I can't believe I haven't read this book and I'm really excited to get to it. I'm not gonna lie, it might be possible that I read all of China Mieville's books this year. I don't know, but I'm really excited and very intrigued. I had such a good time with Embassy Town, so Perdido Street Station is on the list. And then the last fantasy novel that I'm going to put on this list is going to be The Passage by Justin Cronin. And I found out it was kind of a very dark vampire novel that I'm really excited to get back to. I'm kind of done with the sparkly stuff done by Twilight. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and pick up this book, The Passage, and see if I'm a fan of Justin Cronin's work. Now for science fiction. So I decided to go ahead and try something new this year. Since I'm limiting myself to 5 specific authors, I decided to double down on the authors this year. So that means every author that I'm going to list is going to be an author that I have to read 2 books by. So the first one on the list is going to be, in no particular order, Kim Stanley Robinson. Obviously, I'm pulling forward one of his novels, but I'm going to add a second one, and it's going to be whatever I can get my hands on. I'm not going to make any promises, but I will definitely be reading some Kim Stanley Robinson this year. I am really excited to see which books I'm going to pick up by him. Then, of course, I'm going to add to this list Adrian Tchaikovsky. I talk about this guy on my channel all the time, so I need to start getting to a lot of his backlist. I mean, there's so many series of his that I haven't finished or even started, so I need to pick up at least 2 books by him this year. Then we're going with Neal Stephenson, and I am really excited to pick up at least 2 more of his books this year. I need to get through all of his stuff because at some time he's going to start coming out with more books, and then I'm going to be a lot more behind than I was before. Then we have a new author to this list, and that is Ken McLeod. This author has several books on the Hugo Awards list, and I keep having people recommend him to me, and somehow or another I've ended up with 4 of his novels without even having read one. So I'm tired of this. I can't do it anymore. I have to either like him or I have to get rid of these books. So I'm going to give him 2 chances to convince me this year. And my last double down author of 2024 is a little bit of a cheat, and that's going to be the Vinges. Now, Vernor Vinge and Joan Vinge are a very big dynamic duo. Both of them have won Hugo Awards. Now, I did find out that they, I think, have gone through a divorce since, so I decided that I'm going to pick up some of their work. And if I do one by her and one by him, or some sort of mix, I am going to read some books by the Vinges this year. So let me know in the comments section if you have any big suggestions of where I should start with that. Of course, I've read Fire Upon the Deep, but I might end up rereading that one so that way I can continue with the series, A Deepness in the Sky. So that counts for a whole 10 books of the 24 books that I got. So now we're going to get into the specific titles this year. So for the first one, it's going to be a little bit of a weird pick, and that's going to be the book Mickey 7. So I'm going to pick up this book because in March, there is a movie called Mickey 17 that's coming out, and there aren't tons of science fiction movies that I'm really excited to watch. So I think I want to go ahead and read this book so I feel comfortable going to the movie. So I need a little bit of sci-fi action thriller in my life, and this is going to be the book that I'm going to pick up. The next title-specific book is going to be the book Raft by Stephen Baxter. This is supposed to be the first book of the Zealey sequence, which so many of you guys have recommended that I pick up. So I've decided I'm listening to you and I'm going to do it. Then we have the book that is on my pile of shame, Forever War by Joe Haldeman. This is a military science fiction book and I haven't read it, and I know this is unacceptable, so I have to fix it. So Forever War, definitely going to get done this year, probably sooner rather than later. Then we have the book Darwin's Radio by Greg Bear. This is a book that has been gifted to me twice, so clearly people want me to read it. I really enjoyed Blood Music last year, so I'm going to pick up Darwin's Radio. Then we have Permutation City by Greg Egan. This is an author that I'm really apprehensive to pick up, but also secretly excited because he's supposed to be very philosophical and very smart, and I want to know if I understand his books or not. So I'm going to start by reading Permutation City and see what I think. Then we have the book Rosewater. This is an African science fiction novel that is the start of a trilogy that I have been meaning to get to for a while. I have a couple of my friends who like it, so I'm giving it a try this year. Then we have a book recommendation by you guys, and that is the book Damon by Daniel Suarez. This is supposed to be a cyber hacker novel that's supposed to be a fun thriller book. I don't need to know anything more about it. I really enjoyed Delta V by him, so I'm going to pick this one up. Then we have the book Blind Lake by Robert Charles Wilson. This is a book that doesn't really get talked about enough except in those really hardcore sci-fi fandom type areas. So I want to see if this is a book that I'm really going to like or not. I kind of didn't have a great time with his book Spin. I know, it's very shocking, not the best. So I'm really hoping that Blind Lake can convince me that he is a favorite author and I can go find more of his stuff. Then we have two books that are the third books in the series that I really want to get to, and that is, of course, Death's End by Cixin Liu. This is the third and final book in the Three-Body Problem. I don't know how it is that I only read one of these a year, but that's how it happened. So, and then the other third in the series that I'm going to be getting to this year is Xenocide by Orson Scott Card. I really am embarrassed that I haven't gotten to this book sooner. I think that Speaker for the Dead is one of my all-time top 3 favorite science fiction novels I've ever read, and yet I didn't ever continue with the series. I don't know how that happened, and again, I'm trying to fix it. And maybe I'll read the fourth one as well. We'll see if I can get to it. And that does it for my 24 books that I'm going to read for 2024. Let me know in the comment section down below what kind of books you were thinking about reading for 2024. Until next time, see ya.